We are operatives. We are paid to do this. Judge Kavanaugh is supposed to be someone who's above it. If you're Planned Parenthood, if you're the ACLU, if you're the NAACP, how in the world can you think you're going to get a fair hearing from Brett Kavanaugh?
All right, same question to you then, Ashley. What's your big takeaway?
I think the big takeaway here is that no one is a winner in this situation, and for sure the American people are more divided than they ever have been. It was a very dark day. For myself as a female, it was troubling to hear Dr. Ford come forward and share her story. To see Republicans act in the way that they did from the very beginning, this was all mishandled. And I think that this really will affect the Republican Party moving into the midterms and into 2020. They did have an imagery problem when it came to women anyway, and Fox News polling even showed that 50% of voters were already opposing Kavanaugh's nomination before the testimonies were heard. Women, they were 10% more likely to believe Dr. Ford. Among suburban women, that number jumped up to 17 points higher. So I think going into midterms here and after these testimonies, those numbers will only grow, showing that the American people are more divided on this nomination than they ever have been.
Noel, Jeff Flake calling for the investigation. Could that ultimately be what sinks Kavanaugh's nomination? And do Republicans feel that this was a betrayal?
No, not at all. I think everybody understands what, Flake was feeling. I mean, when you looked at him when he came out of committee, you saw he was conflicted. I mean, he was very conflicted. It was in his face. You saw it. And he's not a man that hides what he feels. And I think that, like I said before, nobody is upset with Flake for doing this for his conscience, for doing what he thinks is right, for people to move on. And let's be frank here. We didn't have the votes. And Lindsey Graham even said, Lindsey Graham said, look, I'm a practical man. I'm a practical man. We don't have the votes. And if this is what Republicans that are on the fence need, and maybe even Democrats, I don't know, but if this is what somebody needs, is to allow a week for an FBI investigation to back up Dr. Ford or back up Judge Kavanaugh, either or, then this is the right thing to do.
Do you actually see the Democrats' efforts for this investigation as a delay tactic?
I don't see it as a delay tactic. I see it as something that needs to happen, and they were able to get Republicans to come to the table on that. I fully applaud and support, Senator Flake for coming out and doing this, because he really showed that he was willing to put principle over party, and he has done this time and time again. I really do think, the protester, the young woman who came forward to speak with him yesterday in the elevator, may have had, some sway in that, and I do applaud her for coming forward too and for sharing her story. But to Noel's point, one thing I do want to mention is there was a horrible campaign going on yesterday against Senator Flake for coming forward and for having the spine to come up against Republicans and say, we need an investigation and we need to do right by this situation. So while I am not mad at him, I fully applaud him. There are a lot of people within the Republican space who are very, very upset by his action to do that and see this as a delay tactic by Republicans, not by Democrats.
Is that fair, Peter, to say that Democrats benefit from a delay in this confirmation vote? That may have been part of what was driving this push for an investigation.
I don't believe it is accurate to say that Democrats will benefit. In fact, there may be some Democrats who looked for the investigation to delay the confirmation out of spite for what happened to Merrick Garland when the Republicans spiked his nomination. But the members of the Senate Judiciary Committee, all of whom I know on the Democratic side and many of whom I call friends, I've spoken to them all, and they were doing it for fairness. They were doing it for empathy, and they simply wanted to give the opportunity for a woman who's charging that she's been assaulted a fair chance.
Do you agree with Joel? I mean, with Peter, Joel?
Listen, I think that Democrats did a good job of pushing that narrative, and I applaud Senator Flake for having the spine to change his mind. I think so many times in Washington we criticize people for not being able to change. I think we should give credit here that Senator Flake was able to flip and realize that he needed to reverse course. One other thing I'd say, it's really interesting to me, the president has waged a 2-year war against the FBI, and isn't it interesting that the FBI now holds the key potentially to his Supreme Court justice? And I really do, I'm watching very closely the implications of the president discrediting and disincentivizing the FBI for the last 2 years, and what impact that's going to have in this situation.
And the fact that Rod Rosenstein was the guy that was on the phone with Jeff Flake and Chris Coons as they were trying to figure out where this thing would go. Hey, Noel, I want to get your take on this. It is an exchange between Kavanaugh and Democratic Senator Whitehouse on Thursday. It's getting a lot of buzz. I'll listen to that.
Beach Week Ralph Club biggest contributor. What does the word Ralph mean in that?
That probably refers to throwing up. I'm known to have a weak stomach.
Did the word Ralph you used in your yearbook
I already answered the question. If you're,
did it relate to alcohol?
I like
You
beer.
haven't answered that.
I like beer. I don't know if you do.
Okay.
You like beer, Senator?
Have you, I don't know if it's boofed or boofed. How do you pronounce that?
That
Judge?
refers to flatulence. We were 16.
Okay. Devil's Triangle.
Drinking game.
How's it played?
3 glasses in a triangle.
And
You ever played quarters?
no.
Okay, it's a quarters game.
I don't believe boof is flatulence. I don't believe the Devil's Triangle is a drinking game. And I don't believe calling yourself a girl's alumnus is being her friend.
Noelle, as you listen to this exchange, what do you believe?
Well, Alex, I don't know. I don't know. Who am I to judge? I don't know what Devil's Triangle is. I don't know, what boof is. I don't know what little things they had with each other. I mean, none of us sitting on this panel as political consultants, somebody, people that work in politics, none of us know what this is. He had a right to drill him, and he drilled him down, and Judge Kavanaugh answered the questions. So, my answer to you is I don't know. I really don't.
Okay. Peter Emerson, Joel Payne, Noelle Nickpour, Ashley Pratt. You guys, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. In a moment, it became must-see TV.